Ryan Callahan grabbed her arm, not gently, not politely. Hard the way a man grabs someone who is about to step off the edge of something they cannot come back from. Sophia Whitmore, CEO of a billion-dollar defense company, stumbled against his chest in front of 200 of her own employees, and every single phone in that room started to rise. He made a choice in that moment that most men wouldn't have made. A choice that would cost him more than he could imagine. But the real danger wasn't what happened that night. It was the question she asked him the next morning, 6 quiet words that split his life clean in half. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, subscribe, because you are going to want to stay until the very end. The night it all started, Ryan Callahan almost didn't go. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror in his apartment, already in his dress blues, already tired, already running through the list of things he still had to do before morning pack Lily's lunch sign, her permission slip for the field trip. Call his mother back. Check the fuel receipt he'd forgotten to submit to base admin. 7 years old. His daughter was 7 years old, and he was standing in a bathroom at 6:45 in the evening, trying to remember whether he'd moved her dental appointment or just thought about moving it. "Dad!" He turned around. Lily was standing in the doorway in her pajamas, the ones with the little yellow stars on them that she insisted on wearing, even though she'd had them since she was 5, and they were 2 inches too short in the leg now. She had his dark hair and her mother's stubborn jaw, and she was looking at him the way she always did when she knew something he didn't. "You look nervous," she said. "I'm not nervous." He turned back to the mirror and straightened his collar. "I just don't want to go." "Then don't go." "I have to go." "Why?" He paused. That was the thing about Lily. She asked questions like they were simple, and they almost never were. "Because it's a work event," he said, "and my boss will be there." "The scary one?" Ryan almost smiled. "What do you know about my boss? You said she makes your whole office quiet when she walks in." Lily leaned against the doorframe. "That sounds scary." "She's not scary." He picked up his hat and set it on the counter instead of putting it on. "She's just serious." "You're serious too," Lily said, "and you're not scary." He looked at her then. Really looked. 7 years old, standing there barefoot on the cold tile floor, telling him he wasn't scary like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like she'd known it her whole life and couldn't understand why anyone would think otherwise. "Mrs. Patterson is downstairs," he said. "You need to be in bed by 8:30. 8:45. 8:30 Lily. Dad, it's Friday." He picked up his cover, put it on, looked at himself one more time. 8:45, he said. "But if Mrs. Patterson calls me, you lose screen time for a week." Lily grinned. "Deal." He kissed the top of her head as he walked past. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and the faint ghost of the macaroni and cheese they'd had for dinner. He held it in for a second, that smell, because some nights it was the thing that kept him walking forward. "Dad." He stopped at the top of the stairs. "You look really good," she said. "In your uniform." Ryan Callahan was a man who had spent 16 years in the United States Navy. He had faced 40-foot swells in the North Atlantic. He had made decisions under pressure that kept other men alive. He had stood at the graves of men he served with and kept his voice steady when everything inside him was anything but. He did not let his daughter see him get emotional over a compliment, but he felt it. "Get in bed on time," he said, and walked down the stairs before she could see his face. Chatterbug. The annual holiday gala for Whitmore Defense Technologies was held at the Waterside Marriott in downtown Norfolk, the kind of event that cost more per table than most of Ryan's monthly take-home pay. Crystal chandeliers, past appetizers on silver trays, a string quartet in the corner playing something that nobody was actually listening to. Ryan didn't drink at company events. He'd stopped drinking entirely about 2 years after the divorce, not because he ever had a serious problem, but because he'd noticed he was using it the wrong way. One glass to stop thinking, two to stop feeling, and he was smart enough to recognize a door he didn't want to walk through. So he stood near the edge of the room with a glass of sparkling water and watched. He was good at watching. It was something the Navy had trained into him over years. Raid the room, assess the variables. Identify the thing that's about to go wrong before it does. He spotted her within 10 minutes of arriving. Sophia Whitmore was standing near the bar at the far side of the room, and even from a distance, something was off. He couldn't have said exactly what it was at first. She was dressed perfectly, dark green dress hair, pulled back, the kind of composed exterior that took years to build and maintain. She was talking to a man Ryan recognized as one of the senior VPs, Gerald Hutchins, and from a distance the conversation looked normal. But Ryan watched, and he noticed the way she held her glass too tight. The way her weight had shifted slightly to her left leg, the way she reached out twice and touched the bar rail without looking at it. Small things. The kind of things most people at a company party weren't paying attention to. He glanced around the room. Other people were starting to notice too, but they were noticing it differently. Two women near the appetizer table were whispering to each other with a particular kind of smile that had nothing to do with friendliness. A group of younger analysts near the dance floor were angled toward her in the way people angle toward something they think is about to become entertainment. A man he didn't know had his phone out. Ryan set down his glass of sparkling water. He crossed the room. Gerald Hutchins saw him coming first, and his expression did something complicated. Part relief, part irritation. The look of a man who had been trying to figure out how to extract himself from an uncomfortable situation and wasn't sure whether a solution had just arrived or a complication. "Commander Callahan," Gerald said a little too loudly. "Glad you could make it." "Gerald." Ryan nodded once. Then he looked at Sophia. She looked back at him, and for a second he could see her working to focus. Her eyes were sharp under normal circumstances, the kind of eyes that cataloged everything in a room and filed it away. Right now, they were working a little too hard to stay that way. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, "can I get you something? Water, maybe?" She straightened. It was a reflex, the same way a soldier straightens when caught off guard. "I'm fine, Commander. Of course." He didn't move. "I was going to get myself a glass, thought I'd ask." She looked at him for a moment longer than the exchange required. Then she looked at Gerald, who was already finding a reason to turn toward someone else. Then she looked at the room. Ryan watched her see it. The glances, the phone, the way the people who worked for her were watching her, the way people watch something they expect to fall. He saw something flicker across her face, not embarrassment, something older than that, something closer to exhaustion. "Actually," she said, and her voice was careful, controlled, a woman applying every ounce of her professional armor to a single word, "a glass of water would be fine." He got her water. He stood beside her while she drank it. He kept his body positioned so that his back was to most of the room, which meant anyone trying to angle a phone camera at her was getting a shot of the back of his dress blues instead. She noticed that too. He could tell by the way she didn't say anything about it. They stood there for about 4 minutes without speaking. The string quartet moved into something that might have been Beethoven. Gerald Hutchins had vanished into the crowd. "You don't have to stand here," Sophia said finally. "I know. I'm not going to fall over." "I know that too." She turned her head to look at him. Up close, with her defenses running at about 60% of their usual capacity. She looked different than she did in the conference rooms and the hallways of the office building, where he'd spent the past 2 years working in logistics. She looked like someone who had been carrying something for a very long time. "You're the logistics officer," she said. "Callahan." "Yes, ma'am." "You coordinated the Rampart supply chain restructure last spring." "I did." "You saved us approximately $400,000. "The team did." "Don't do that." Her voice sharpened slightly, the professional edge cutting through. "Don't deflect credit. I hate it when people deflect credit." He looked at her. "Then yes, I saved the company $400,000. She almost smiled. It didn't quite land, but it tried. Better, she said. They stood in silence for another minute. Then she put the empty water glass on the bar rail and said very quietly, "I think I need to go home." "I think that's a good idea," he said. "I drove myself here." "I know. I'm not—" She stopped, started again. "I don't think I should drive." "No," he agreed. "You shouldn't." She turned to look at him fully then. Sophia Whitmore, who ran a company that built defense systems for the United States military, who had negotiated contracts with people who negotiated for a living, who had clawed her way to the top of an industry that had spent decades telling women like her that there wasn't room, looked at a Navy logistics officer and said in a voice so low it barely carried over the string quartet, "I need help." Ryan Callahan had heard those words in a lot of contexts. On ships in planning rooms from men who were too proud to say them until they absolutely had to. He knew what it cost to say them. He knew what it felt like to need help and ask for it and feel the ground shift under you when you did. "Okay," he said. "Simple as that. Let's get your coat." He got her coat. He found her purse, which had somehow migrated to a chair near the bar area, and he steered her toward the exit in a way that looked to anyone watching like two colleagues leaving an event together. Not like a CEO being helped out of her own company party before the wrong person got the wrong picture and the wrong story went somewhere it couldn't be taken back from. The cold air outside hit them both. Sophia pulled in a long breath, held it, let it out. "This is humiliating," she said. "It doesn't have to be," Ryan said. "My employees just watched their CEO get walked out of a party by one of her own staff members. Your employees watched two people leave an event. That's all they saw." He paused. "The ones who were going to make it into something were going to do that regardless. The ones who weren't, won't." She was quiet for a moment. "You're very calm." "It's useful," he said. "Is that Navy or is that you?" He thought about it. Both probably. He had texted his neighbor from inside Mrs. Patterson to let her know he'd be later than expected. Mrs. Patterson, 73 years old, former school librarian, and possibly the most reliably steady human being Ryan had ever known, texted back, "No rush." Lily fell asleep on the couch with her book. "She's fine." He got Sophia into a cab. She refused an Uber, said she didn't want anything API-based, where her location could be tracked, and he didn't ask questions about that. And then, because she gave the driver her address, and then immediately put her head back against the seat and closed her eyes, he got in too. "You didn't have to come," she said without opening her eyes. "I know. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true." The cab moved through downtown Norfolk. Lights from the waterfront, the familiar smell of the harbor. Ryan sat on his side of the back seat with his hands on his knees and watched the road and let the silence sit the way you let silence sit when someone needs it more than conversation. Then Sophia said, "Why did you stay at the party? Why didn't you just walk past?" He considered the question seriously the way he tried to consider most questions that mattered. "I noticed something was wrong," he said, "and I could do something about it." That's a very military answer. Maybe. Most people would have kept walking. There was something in her voice, not accusation, but something edged with a kind of tired curiosity, like she was genuinely trying to understand a thing she hadn't encountered before. Most people would have said it wasn't their business. "Most people aren't wrong about that," he said, "but I wasn't most people tonight." She opened her eyes then, looked at him across the back seat. The streetlights moved across her face in slow intervals. "Do you always talk like this?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like every sentence is something you actually thought about before you said it." He almost laughed. "My daughter would tell you that's not true. She'd tell you I say, 'because I said so,' a lot." Sophia blinked. "You have a daughter." 7 years old. He paused. She tells me I look nervous in my uniform when I'm not nervous. She's usually right. There was a silence. Then Sophia said, I didn't know you had a child. It doesn't usually come up at work. No, she agreed. I suppose it doesn't. Another pause. Her mother, we divorced 4 years ago. He kept his voice level, factual. It's just me and Lily. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. The cab turned onto a street with larger houses, the addresses growing further apart. I'm sorry, she said finally. That must be... She seemed to search for the word. Hard. It is, he said. And it isn't. It just is what it is. That's a very patient way of looking at it. I don't know that I'm patient, Ryan said. I think I'm just clear on what actually matters. Sophia turned to look out the window. Her reflection looked back at her. I live alone, she said. It came out flat without context or preamble, the way people sometimes say true things when their guard is down far enough that the truth just surfaces on its own. I have a 5,000 square foot house, and I live in it alone. I have a housekeeper who comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have a personal chef who leaves meals 3 days a week. Other than that... She stopped. Ryan didn't fill the silence. Other than that, she continued, I go home to nothing. I work 14-hour days, and I go home to nothing, and I wake up, and I do it again. She didn't say it like she wanted sympathy. She said it like someone reciting a fact they had stopped arguing with. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I run a company that employs 1,200 people. I have attended every major defense conference in the country for the past 6 years. A pause. Nobody has ever asked if I was tired. The cab slowed in front of a large, dark house set back from the road. Are you? Ryan asked. She looked at him. Tired, he said. Something in her face shifted, just slightly. The professional exterior, the thing she wore the way he wore his uniform, moved like a wall that had absorbed one too many impacts and was deciding whether to hold. Yes, she said. The word was barely above a whisper. I'm very tired. The cab stopped. Ryan paid the driver before she could object. She started to, and he simply said, We can settle it at work, with such complete finality that she stopped. He walked her to the door. She fumbled with her keys for a moment, and he waited without reaching for them, which she noticed. You're not going to take them, she asked. They're your keys. She found the right one, opened the door, stood in the entrance for a moment. She started, stopped, started again. Thank you, Commander. Ryan, he said. Tonight, just Ryan. She looked at him. Sophia, she said quietly. They stood there for a half second, just a half second, but the kind of half second that has weight in it. Then she said, There's a guest room. If it's too late to... I'll be fine on the road, he said. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it. Mrs. Patterson. She's asking when you're coming home, honey. She woke up. He looked up. Actually, he said if the offer still stands, I need to make a call. Sophia stepped back from the door. Of course. He called Mrs. Patterson, told her Lily was asleep and he'd be home before 6 a.m. Mrs. Patterson, who had seen Ryan Callahan navigate more exhausted nights than either of them could count, simply said, I'll make sure the door's unlocked. Get some rest yourself, Ryan. He stood in Sophia Whitmore's kitchen, all white marble and professional-grade appliances that had the look of things that had never been used past their basic functions, and felt the particular weight of a quiet house that belonged to someone who spent most of their time not in it. He found a glass, poured water, left it on the counter with a notepad she had near the refrigerator. He wrote 5 sentences, read them back, left them there. The guest room was at the end of the hall, furnished in that particular way of guest rooms that are never used too neat, too impersonal. Everything placed just slightly too deliberately to feel like anyone had ever actually rested there. He took off his dress shoes and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. He thought about Lily, about the permission slip, about whether he'd moved the dental appointment or only thought about moving it. He thought about the look on Sophia Whitmore's face when she said yes to being tired. The way it came out of her like something she had been holding under pressure for a long time. He thought about his ex-wife Dana, about the way Dana had told him at the end that the hardest part wasn't the long deployments or the uncertainty. The hardest part, she'd said, was that she never felt like he saw her. That he was so good at reading ships and weather systems and logistics matrices, and so bad, so genuinely fundamentally bad at reading her. He had argued with her about that at the time. He didn't argue with it anymore. He lay down on top of the guest room comforter without getting under it, closed his eyes, and thought, I saw her tonight. He didn't mean it as anything, didn't frame it as anything. It was just a thought, the kind that surfaces in the few minutes before sleep takes over and stops feeling like anything at all. I saw her tonight. He was asleep in 4 minutes. He was up at 5:15. He moved quietly through the house, the way he moved through everything on short sleep efficiently without waste. He had his dress shoes in his hand when he passed the kitchen and saw through the door that the glass of water he'd left on the counter was empty. She'd been up. He set the shoes down and went to the kitchen. The notepad with his 5 sentences was still there. He stood there for a moment in the early dark of the house, looking at the empty water glass and the notepad, and felt something he hadn't expected to feel standing in a CEO's kitchen at 5 in the morning. He felt careful, not about himself, not about what anyone at the office might think, or what the situation looked like, or what it might cost him professionally. All of that existed, yes. He wasn't naive. But what he felt in that moment was something more specific than professional caution. He felt careful about her. The way you feel careful about a thing that matters and is more fragile than it looks. He found a pen on the counter. Under his 5 sentences, drink water, eat breakfast. And remember, even strong people need someone sometimes. He added one more line. Call me if you need anything, not as your employee, just as someone who was here. He left his cell number. He put on his shoes in the front hall as quiet as he could manage. He had his hand on the door handle when he heard her voice from the top of the stairs. Ryan! He turned. She was standing at the top of the stairs in a robe, her hair down the CEO stripped all the way back to just a person. She looked not embarrassed. Something past embarrassment. Something that had made its peace with the fact that the night had happened, and she was standing here in it. I read your note, she said. Okay. The part about strong people. Yeah. She looked at him for a moment, and then she asked it. Not the question he would have expected, not an apology, not a professional pivot, not a thank you, or a discussion of discretion, or a request that last night remained between them. Not any of those things. She looked at Ryan Callahan standing in her front hall at 5:15 in the morning, and she asked, How do you do it? He waited. How do you do it every day? She said. Get up. Take care of a child alone. Go to work. Come home. Do it again. How do you do it when there's no one? She stopped. Something moved through her face. When there's no one there to notice that it's hard. The house was completely quiet. Ryan stood there with the door handle in his hand and let the question land where it needed to land. You notice? He said finally. She looked confused. What? You notice it's hard, he said. You just said so. Noticing it yourself is the start. He paused. And Lily notices, even when she doesn't know what she's noticing. She sees me show up. That's enough. On most days, that's enough. Sophia came down 2 steps, not the whole stairs, just 2. As if she wanted to be closer to the conversation without committing to the distance. And on the other days, she asked quietly. He thought about it. Thought about the nights he sat in the kitchen at 11 p.m. after Lily was in bed with a cup of coffee gone cold, going through the logistics of the next morning, the way he went through pre-deployment checklists. Thought about the Tuesday night 4 months ago when Lily came down with a high fever, and he spent 6 hours watching her sleep with one hand on the thermometer and one hand on his phone in case he needed to call someone. And there was nobody to call. Nobody to say, you can sleep. I've got this. She's okay. Nobody to hand it to even for an hour. On the other days, he said, you just move through it. You put one foot in front of the other. And eventually it's morning. She was quiet. Does it get easier? She asked. No, he said. But you get better at it. She stood on those 2 steps and looked at him with an expression he couldn't fully read, not because it was hidden, but because it was too layered to take in all at once. There was something raw in it, and something else, something that looked under everything like recognition, like she was looking at something she already knew from the inside. I have a board meeting Monday, she said. There will be questions about last night. I know. I need to handle that myself. I know that too. I'm not... She paused. I'm not asking you to protect me from it. I didn't think you were. She came down one more step. But if someone asks me directly what happened last night, I'm going to tell them the truth. Ryan met her eyes. What is the truth? That I needed help, she said. And someone helped me. He nodded once. She looked at him for another moment. Then, thank you, Ryan. Drive safe, he said out of habit, and then almost smiled, because he was the one leaving, and she wasn't going anywhere. She almost smiled back. He opened the door. The morning outside was cold and dark, and the sky had that particular quality it gets in early December in Virginia. Not yet light, but no longer fully night. Somewhere between. Ryan Callahan walked to his car. He thought about his daughter, about the permission slip, about whether the right thing he'd done last night was going to become the wrong thing by Monday morning, about the question Sophia had asked him at the top of those stairs. How do you do it when there's no one there to notice that it's hard? He hadn't fully answered it. The real answer, the one he hadn't said out loud, was that some nights you don't do it well. Some nights you sit in the kitchen with cold coffee and you feel the size of the silence around you, and you understand in a way that's almost physical that you are holding something very large and holding it entirely alone. And then, morning comes. And you get up, because there is a 7-year-old girl with dark hair and a stubborn jaw and star-printed pajamas that are 2 inches too short, and she is waiting for you. And she believes with her whole uncomplicated heart that you are exactly enough. Some days, that is all you have, and some days, it turns out that all you have is all you need. Ryan pulled out of the driveway of Sophia Whitmore's dark, empty, 5,000-square-foot house. He drove home to his daughter. He didn't know yet what Monday would bring. He didn't know yet what the question at the top of the stairs had started. He didn't know that 6 simple words spoken by a woman standing barefoot on her own staircase at 5 in the morning were going to reach inside a life he thought he had finished building and rearrange every single thing inside it. He just drove. The sky was getting lighter, and Ryan Callahan, Commander United States Navy single father man who showed up, moved toward it. He made it home by 6:10. Lily was still asleep, which meant he had exactly 52 minutes before he needed to have her breakfast on the table, her backpack checked, and both of them out the door. He moved through the apartment on autopilot, started the coffee, pulled out the eggs, found the permission slip he'd been trying to remember under a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. He signed it with one hand and held his coffee with the other and stood at the kitchen window, watching the sky finish, deciding whether it was morning or not. Mrs. Patterson had left a note on the counter in her careful old-school cursive. She was fine, ate a good dinner, tried to stay up, but didn't make it past 9. The book she fell asleep with is on the couch. Thought you'd want to put it back before she asked where it was. EP. He found the book, a chapter book about a girl who discovers she can communicate with whales. He'd read the first 3 chapters aloud to Lily 2 weeks ago, and she'd been finishing it herself since then, always face down and open when she fell asleep like she was worried the story would move on without her if she closed it. He set it on the coffee table face up bookmarked at her page. Then he sat down at the kitchen table with his coffee and allowed himself exactly 5 minutes to sit still and think about the night before. He thought about the cab, about the marble kitchen and the empty water glass and the notepad, about Sophia standing on those stairs in the early morning dark, the CEO all the way gone, just a woman asking a question she didn't know she needed to ask. How do you do it when there's no one there to notice that it's hard? He thought about what Monday morning would look like at Whitmore Defense Technologies. He thought about Gerald Hutchins, who had been present for part of the evening, and had the kind of instinct for self-preservation that made men like him dangerous in an office environment. He thought about the phones that had come up, and what may or may not have been captured, and whether the people who had been watching Sophia last night were the kind of people who stayed quiet or the kind who talked. In his experience, most people talked. He finished his coffee, got up, made eggs, and when Lily padded into the kitchen at 7:03 in her too short pajamas, with her dark hair going in 4 different directions, he put the plate in front of her, without a word about where he'd been or how little he'd slept, and she ate her eggs and told him about a dream she'd had involving a submarine and a grocery store, and he listened to every word. That was Sunday. Monday was something else.
Kaka sumumtasi.
He knew it was going to be a problem before he even got to his floor. He could feel it in the elevator. The particular quality of a silence that has content in it, 2 women from HR who stopped talking when the doors opened and found reasons to look at their phones. A mid-level analyst named Derek, who nodded at Ryan, a half-second too late, the timing of a man who'd just made a decision about whether to make eye contact. Ryan had spent 16 years reading rooms. He read this one in about 30 seconds. He got to his desk in the logistics division, sat down, and had been at his computer for exactly 4 minutes when his office phone rang. Callahan. My office. It was Gerald Hutchins. Now please. Please. That word in Gerald's mouth meant the opposite of what it meant everywhere else. Ryan took his coffee, walked down the hall to Gerald's corner office, knocked twice on the open door. Gerald was already standing behind his desk, which meant he'd thought about how this meeting should look, and decided it should look like he was in charge of it. He was in his early 50s, silver-haired, the kind of man who had built a career out of being in the right rooms without being the most important person in them. Smart enough to know where the power was. Not quite courageous enough to be the power himself. Close the door, Gerald said. Ryan closed it. Didn't sit down. Gerald hadn't told him to sit down, and Ryan was not the kind of man who sat in a chair because a room seemed to expect it. Gerald looked at him for a moment. Then he said, "You drove Sophia Whitmore home Friday night." "I arranged transport," Ryan said. "She wasn't in a condition to drive." "Her condition," Gerald said carefully, "is something the company would prefer not to become a topic of public discussion." "I agree. And yet..." Gerald picked up a pen, put it down. "There are people talking, Ryan. There are always people talking. This is different." Gerald looked at him. "You are a logistics officer. You are not Ms. Whitmore's personal staff. You are not her driver, her assistant, or her friend. What you did Friday night, and I want to be very clear that I'm not questioning your intentions, what you did created a perception problem." Ryan said nothing. "A perception problem," Gerald repeated, apparently feeling the point, needed emphasis, that has already reached 2 members of the executive board. "What perception?" Ryan asked. "That a junior officer took advantage of a private moment with the CEO of this company for reasons that may not have been entirely altruistic." Ryan felt something happen in his chest. Not anger exactly, something quieter and more dangerous than anger. The kind of thing that happened when a person said something profoundly wrong and said it with the calm confidence of a man who had already decided it was true. "Let me make sure I understand you," Ryan said. His voice was even. He'd trained it to be even in situations that wanted it to be otherwise. "I made sure my boss got home safely when she was in a vulnerable situation, and the problem is that I did that." "The problem," Gerald said, "is how it looks." "How it looks to who?" "To the board members who received photographs." "What photographs?" Gerald paused. "Someone took pictures," Ryan said. It wasn't a question. Gerald opened a desk drawer, pulled out a printed sheet, and slid it across the desk without looking at it. Ryan stepped forward and picked it up. There were 3 photos. grainy shot from a distance on someone's phone. The first showed Ryan with his hand on Sophia's elbow near the bar, his back to the camera. The second showed them walking toward the exit together. The third, and this was the one that was going to cause problems, Ryan could see that immediately showed them at the cab, Sophia leaning slightly against him as she got in Ryan's hand briefly on her back. Individually, they were nothing. Together with the right framing, they told a story. And the story they told was not the one that had actually happened. Ryan set the paper back on the desk. Who sent these? That's not something I'm able to share. Gerald. Ryan. Gerald looked genuinely uncomfortable now, which was something. Discomfort was more honest than the professional neutrality he'd been performing. I'm trying to give you a chance to get ahead of this. That's all I'm doing here. Nobody has made any formal accusations. What I need to know is whether there is anything in your behavior Friday night that you would be unwilling to describe fully and accurately in front of the board. Ryan looked at him steadily. No, he said. There isn't. Good. Gerald nodded. Then the best course of action. But I want to know who sent those photos. I've told you I can't. Because, Ryan continued, his voice still level, still controlled. Those photographs show me helping my employer get to a cab safely, and whoever took them and sent them to a board member was doing so with a specific intent, and that intent should matter to the people running this company. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Leave it with me, he said finally. I will, Ryan said. For now. He picked up his coffee, which had gone cold, walked back to the door, had his hand on the handle when Gerald said, Ryan, for what it's worth, I believe you did the right thing. Ryan turned his head slightly. For what it's worth, he said. I wasn't asking whether you believed me. He went back to his desk. He spent the next hour doing his actual job quarterly supply logistics review, 2 vendor emails, a report that was due Thursday, and he did it with the particular focused discipline of a man who has learned that the best response to a destabilizing moment is to do the next right thing and keep moving. His phone buzzed at 9:47. It was a text from a number he didn't have saved. But the message identified itself clearly enough. It's Sophia. Can you come to my office at 10? Use the stairwell, not the elevator. He stared at the message for a moment. Then he replied, yes. He took the stairwell. Her assistant, a young woman named Caitlin, who had been with Sophia for 3 years and had the look of someone who had survived things without talking about them, nodded at him when he came through the door on the executive floor. She's expecting you, Caitlin said, and her voice had the particular careful neutrality of a person who was making a professional decision not to have an opinion. The office was large, floor-to-ceiling windows on the east side, a conference table along one wall. Her main desk at the far end, a massive thing that she was standing behind rather than sitting at when he came in. She was in full CEO mode, dark suit hair up every inch of the exterior back in place and locked down. She looked exactly like herself, except her hands, Ryan noticed, were flat on the desk. The way hands go flat on a surface when you need it to be steady under you. Close the door, she said. He did. Sit down. He sat. Not because the room expected it, but because he chose to. She didn't sit. She stood behind her desk and looked at him for a long moment, and then she said, Gerald spoke to you. 30 minutes ago. He told you about the photographs. Yes. And I told him there was nothing in my behavior Friday night that I would be unwilling to describe fully and accurately in front of anyone. Something moved through her face, not relief exactly, but something adjacent to it. The acknowledgement of a fact she'd already believed but needed confirmed. There are 2 board members, she said, who have called me this morning asking for clarification on Friday's event. I know. One of them, James Alcott, has suggested that the company should consider whether the continued employment of certain staff members creates a conflict of interest, given recent events. She said it flatly. The way you say something when you've processed the anger of it and what's left is just the fact. Ryan held her gaze. He's suggesting firing me. He's suggesting reviewing the situation. Her jaw was tight. Which is Alcott's version of the same thing. Do you know who took the photographs? I have a strong suspicion. She moved around the desk, which was the first time since he'd sat down that she'd stepped away from the support of it. She walked to the window and stood there with her arms crossed. There is a man in this company named Derek Finch. He's in market development. He's been here 6 years. He has wanted the VP of Strategic Partnerships role for 3 of those years, and I gave it to someone else 8 months ago. She paused. He has also made it very clear through various channels that he believes women in executive positions at defense companies create inherent instability. He's been careful about how he expresses that belief, but I've heard it. And you think Friday was an opportunity for him? I think some people look for ammunition, she said, and then wait for an opportunity to use it. She turned from the window. I'm sorry, Ryan. He looked at her. The apology surprised him, not that she'd offered it, but the way she had. Direct. No qualifications. Not, I'm sorry if this caused any trouble, or I'm sorry you're in this position. Just, I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize, he said. I think I do. She came back to the desk and sat down in her chair, and for a moment, she looked less like a CEO and more like a person who was tired of holding a very heavy thing. You helped me. And the way the world is set up, that put you at risk. That's not right. It's not... She stopped. It's not fair. A lot of things aren't fair, Ryan said. That doesn't change what happened or why. She looked at him. You're very hard to rattle. I've had practice. The Navy, he confirmed, and a 7-year-old. There it was again, that thing that happened when he mentioned Lily. Sophia's expression shifted in a way she wasn't fully controlling some gate opening slightly that the CEO exterior usually kept shut. How is she? Sophia asked. Your daughter. Eating eggs and talking about submarines this morning, so I assume she's fine. Submarines. She had a dream. She dreams in very specific technical detail for a 7-year-old. He paused. She wants to know how propulsion works underwater. I'm not entirely sure how to explain that at a first-grade level without either oversimplifying it or accidentally making it interesting enough that she decides to become an engineer. Sophia's mouth did something that was very nearly a smile. Would that be a bad thing? Not at all. It would mean she stops asking me to explain it. There was a beat of silence, and in that silence, something shifted slightly in the room, not toward anything in particular, just away from the formal version of the conversation they'd been having, and toward something less managed. Tell me about her, Sophia said. And then almost immediately, you don't have to. If that feels... Lily was born in March, Ryan said. She weighed 6 pounds 9 ounces. She didn't sleep through the night until she was 11 months old, which I know because I was deployed for 5 of those months, and my ex-wife used to send me time-stamped texts at 2 a.m. that just said, still awake. She learned to read at 4. She is terrified of ceiling fans, but completely fine with spiders, which I don't understand. She cried for 6 weeks straight when her hamster died, and made me have a funeral in the backyard with a handwritten program. He stopped. She made me wear a tie to the hamster's funeral. Sophia stared at him. She made you wear a tie. A full tie. She said it was what the hamster would have wanted. How did she know what the hamster would have wanted? She'd given it a lot of thought, Ryan said. She'd apparently been thinking about the hamster's feelings for quite some time before the hamster had any idea it was dying. This time, the smile actually landed. It was a real one, not the professional version, not the managed warmth she deployed in client meetings, but an actual involuntary, arrived-at-its-own-accord smile that changed the entire architecture of her face. Ryan noticed. He didn't say anything about it, but he noticed. She sounds extraordinary, Sophia said. She is, he said simply. She's the best thing I've ever done. Sophia was quiet for a moment. There was something in her face now that was harder to read. Not sad exactly, but in the territory of sad. Something that looked at what he'd just described and recognized a distance between itself and it. I always thought I would... She started. Stopped. I made a series of decisions in my 30s that were very logical and very correct, and that I don't entirely regret. She said it the way you say something you've rehearsed but no longer fully believe. The company, the growth, everything I built. And, Ryan said. She looked at him sharply, as if she hadn't expected him to hear and that wasn't there. And I'm 34 years old, she said. And I am very successful. And I ate dinner alone last night, and I will eat dinner alone tonight, and the person who noticed that was wrong and said something about it was a Navy logistics officer who stayed in my guest room because I was in no condition to be alone, and he somehow knew that. She stopped. And I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it, he said. Not today. There's a board meeting on Thursday, she said. The subject change was deliberate, the CEO stepping back in front of the person. Alcott will bring this up. He'll frame it as a governance question. He'll be very careful about it. She met Ryan's eyes. I want you to know that I will handle that. I know you will. I need you to let me handle it. He understood what she was saying. Don't fight it yourself. Don't go around her. Don't try to protect her from this in a way that makes it about him protecting her, which would only make Alcott's narrative easier to sell. Understood, he said. She nodded. He stood. Is there anything else? She looked up at him. For a moment, she was on the edge of something. He could see it in the way she held herself, the slight tension in the pause. Then she said, No, that's all. He nodded once, walked to the door. Ryan. He turned. The note? She said. The one you left. I read it 3 times. He said nothing, just waited. Nobody has ever written me something like that, she said. Not my board, not my staff, not... She stopped. Nobody. Ryan stood there for a moment with the door handle in his hand in Sophia Whitmore's executive office on a Monday morning, with photographs of him in the hands of a man who wanted to use them and a board meeting on Thursday, and Lily's permission slip already signed and in her backpack. You deserved it, he said. You still do. He walked out. The week felt like weather moving in. Ryan did his job. He stayed in his lane. He didn't talk about the party, didn't address the looks he was getting in the hallway, didn't walk past Gerald's office more than necessary. He picked Lily up from school every day at 3:15. He made dinners. He listened to chapters of the Whale book. He went to bed at 10 and was up at 5 and carried the ordinary weight of his life the way he always had, which was simply by carrying it. But he was aware, the way you're aware of a pressure system moving towards shore, even when the sky above you is still clear of what was building at the edges of the week. Wednesday night, Lily asked him, Dad, are you worried about something? They were at the kitchen table. She was working on a math worksheet, and he was going through some supply projections he'd brought home. She didn't look up when she asked it. What makes you think that? He said. You've made coffee 3 times tonight, and you haven't drunk any of them. He looked at the 3 half-full coffee mugs arranged on the counter like evidence of a distracted mind. I'm fine, he said. You always say that. Because I'm usually right. She looked up then. That direct, unsettling gaze she'd had since she was about 2 years old, and figured out that most adults would look away before she did. Is it about work? It's adult stuff, he said. Nothing you need to worry about. I'm not worried, she said. I'm asking. He put down his pen, looked at her seriously the way she deserved to be looked at when she asked a serious question. There's some stuff happening at work that might be complicated, he said, but I'm handling it. Do you need help? The question came out so straightforwardly that he almost laughed. From you. I'm good at problems, she said, like it was just a fact she was reporting. You're good at math problems, he said. This is a different kind. What kind? He thought about how to answer that. The kind where someone did the right thing, and some people are trying to make it look like the wrong thing. Lily considered this for a moment with the focused attention she gave to anything that seemed like a puzzle worth solving. Then she said, "That sounds like what happened in my book. The whale book. The girl helps the whale escape from the research facility because it was the right thing, and everyone thought she was wrong at first. But then they figured out that she was actually right and the facility was lying." She looked at her worksheet. The truth came out. "That's a book, Lily." "Books come from real things," she said, with the certainty of a 7-year-old who has read enough to believe it. Ryan picked up his pen. Tried the coffee that was in the closest mug. Cold. He put it back down. "The truth comes out," he said quietly. "It always does," she said. "In every book I've ever read." He looked at his daughter for a moment, 7 years old, dark hair, stubborn jaw, complete and total confidence in the moral arc of every story, and felt something ease slightly in his chest. "Finish your worksheet," he said. "Already done," she said, and slid it across the table to him. He checked it. She'd gotten every problem right. He initialed the bottom and slid it back. She picked it up without looking at it and went back to her whale book, and Ryan sat across the table from her in the quiet of a Wednesday night and thought, yeah, the truth comes out. Thursday morning. Ryan got to work at 7:30 and found 3 things waiting for him. The first was an email from base admin about a logistics review that had nothing to do with Whitmore and needed to be completed by end of month. He filed it under real work, get to this. The second was a note from Gerald Hutchins slipped under his office door, with Gerald's particular flair for the unnecessarily formal board meeting at 10 a.m. You may be asked to provide a brief account of Friday evening's events. Please be available. The third was a text from Sophia sent at 6:45 in the morning. I told you I would handle it. I will. That was all it said. No follow-up, no explanation. Just, I will. He texted back, I know. He spent the time until 10 a.m. doing exactly what he'd done all week, his actual work. Supply projections, vendor correspondence, the quarterly cost analysis that nobody else in the department liked doing, and that Ryan had quietly taken on because he found the logic of numbers grounding in a way that most things weren't. At 9:58, Gerald appeared at his door. They're ready. Ryan stood, straightened his collar, walked down the hall to the executive floor's main conference room, where 5 board members and 2 company attorneys were seated around a table that cost more than his car. James Alcott was on the far end, early 60s, silver. The kind of face that had been making decisions about other people's lives for so long that it had forgotten what it felt like to be on the receiving end of one. He had a folder open in front of him that Ryan was fairly certain contained printed copies of the photographs. 2 other board members Ryan recognized from company events. The remaining 2 he didn't know by name but knew by type, older men, conservative, bearing the kind of people who made good board members and difficult human beings. And Sophia. She was at the head of the table. Same dark suit she'd been wearing all week, same hair, same complete control of her exterior. She looked at Ryan when he came in and gave him nothing in her expression, not reassurance, not warning, nothing, which he understood meant, trust me and be quiet. He sat in the empty chair that had clearly been placed for him, across from Alcott. Commander Callahan, Alcott said in the tone of a man who had said many impressive-sounding sentences in conference rooms over the years. Thank you for joining us. Of course, Ryan said. I'll be direct. Alcott opened the folder. Several members of this board have raised concerns about the events of Friday evening and your role in them. Specifically, I'd like to address that, Sophia said. Every head in the room turned toward her. Alcott blinked. Sophia, we agreed that the board would... We agreed to a conversation, she said. I'm having it. She looked at Alcott, and whatever was in her eyes made him close his mouth. James, you have photographs of Commander Callahan helping me into a cab. I want to be very clear about what those photographs show. They show an employee, my employee, making sure that I, his boss, was not left alone in a state that could have put me in danger or embarrassed this company significantly more than a grainy phone photograph. Sophia, he didn't take me home because of an ulterior motive, she said. He took me home because there were 30 people in that room with their phones out waiting for me to fall, and he was the only one who walked toward me instead of toward a better angle for a photo. She paused. If that's a conflict of interest, James, I'd like you to explain which interest it conflicts with, because from where I'm sitting, he protected this company. He protected me. And the person in that room who should be sitting in front of this board is whoever decided to send those photographs to you in the first place. Alcott looked down at his folder. I know who sent them, Sophia said. Her voice was steady, absolute. I also know why, and that situation will be addressed separately and through the appropriate channels. She looked around the table. But I will not sit here and allow a man who did the decent thing to be made to account for it. Not in my company, not on my watch. The room was very quiet. One of the board members Ryan didn't know, a woman in her late 50s, whom he would later learn was Helen Marsh, the board's longest-serving member, looked at Sophia for a moment and then said, So, your official position is that Commander Callahan acted appropriately. My official position, Sophia said, is that he acted with more integrity than anyone else in that room on Friday night. Yes. Helen Marsh nodded once. Good enough for me, she said, and closed the folder that had been open in front of her. Alcott looked around the table for support that wasn't coming. He was a man who was good at reading rooms, and this room was telling him clearly that the ground had shifted while he was still standing on the old version of it. I want it noted, he said, falling back to the formal, that the board takes seriously any potential conflict of. Noted, Sophia said. Is there anything else? There wasn't. Ryan walked out of that conference room behind Sophia Whitmore, and he felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Not relief, though that was there too. Something else. The particular experience of watching someone be exactly who they were under pressure, and have it turn out to be enough. In the hallway, she walked ahead of him toward her office. Her assistant materialized from somewhere and began talking to her about her 11 o'clock. She responded without breaking stride, already moving into the next thing the way she always moved. But as she turned the corner into her office hallway, she glanced back over her shoulder. Just for a second, not a smile, not even close to a smile, just a look. A brief, direct, here and then gone look that said, I told you. Ryan stood in the hallway and watched her disappear around the corner. Gerald materialized at his elbow. Well, Gerald said. Yeah, Ryan agreed. For what it's worth, Gerald started. Gerald, Ryan said, not unkindly. You've said that before. Gerald had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Right, yes. He straightened his tie. Good morning, Commander. Good morning, Ryan said, and went back to his desk. 2 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon, Ryan was in the parking garage heading to his car when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. It was Sophia. Out of context, no assistant, no folder, no executive floor. She looked slightly different, still composed. But the spaces between the composure were showing. You're leaving early, she said. 3:15 pickup, he said. Same as every day. She stopped a few feet away. She had her car keys in her hand, but she wasn't moving toward her car. I was wondering, she said, and then stopped, which was something he'd noticed she never did in professional settings, start a sentence and stop. He waited. I was wondering, she said again, if it would be overstepping, to ask whether you and Lily had plans this weekend. Ryan looked at her. You mentioned that she was working on a science project about ocean ecosystems, Sophia said with the precise, slightly over-explained delivery of a person who had prepared a reason and was now deploying it with more care than the reason probably required. I have a membership to the Virginia Aquarium. I haven't used it in about 4 months. I thought if she stopped. If you both... Saturday, Ryan said. She blinked. I'm sorry. We're free Saturday morning, he said. 10 o'clock. She looked at him. Something moved through her expression, not the relief of someone who'd gotten what they wanted, but the more complicated relief of someone who hadn't expected to ask and hadn't expected to be answered this quickly and wasn't sure what either of those things meant. 10 o'clock, she said. I'll text you the entrance location. I know where. I'll text you, he said again, smiling slightly, so you have somewhere to put Saturday at 10 o'clock. She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she said very quietly, Okay. She turned toward her car. Sophia, he said. She turned back. She's going to ask you a lot of questions about whales, he said, and possibly about submarine propulsion. I want you to go in with that information. She stood there in this parking garage with her keys in her hand and the composed CEO exterior doing its complicated negotiation with whatever was happening underneath it, and she said, I actually know quite a lot about submarine propulsion. Of course you do, Ryan said. You make them. This time the smile came easily, fully. The real one. The one that changed her face. She turned and walked to her car. Ryan stood for a moment in the parking garage and thought about the week that had just happened. The photographs, the board meeting. Gerald's careful words. Alcott's folder, Sophia, at the head of the table, saying he protected me in a room full of people who had never heard her say anything like it. He thought about Lily and the whale book, and the truth comes out, Dad, in every book I've ever read. He got in his car and drove to school. Lily was waiting on the front steps with her backpack on both shoulders and her whale book in one hand, and when she saw the car, she started walking toward it immediately. Not running, because she'd decided recently that running to the car was babyish, but moving with the kind of focused efficiency that was Ryan knew the closest she'd let herself get to running in front of her third-grade classmates. She got in, buckled, looked at him. You look different, she said. How? She considered him with that direct, unsettling gaze. Like something went right, she said. Ryan pulled out of the school parking lot. Maybe it did, he said. The work stuff. Some of it. Lily opened her whale book to her page. I told you, she said. The truth comes out. Ryan drove. The sky outside was the kind of clear December blue that doesn't last long, the kind that shows up for a day or two at the end of a hard week, as if the weather is acknowledging something. He thought about Saturday at 10 o'clock. He thought about a woman who knew about submarine propulsion standing next to his daughter in front of an aquarium tank. He thought about the look Sophia had given him in the hallway outside the conference room. Brief, direct, here and then gone. Not a smile. Just a look that said, I told you. He kept driving. Lily turned a page, and something that had not been in Ryan Callahan's life 3 weeks ago. Some small, fragile, precise thing that didn't have a name yet, and he wasn't ready to give one, moved quietly forward alongside everything else he was carrying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just forward. Saturday came in cold and bright, the kind of morning that made no promises about the afternoon. Ryan had told Lily about the aquarium on Friday night after dinner, keeping it simple. We're going with someone from work. Someone I think you'll like. And Lily had put down her whale book and looked at him with the particular focused attention she reserved for information she was deciding what to do with. Someone from work, she repeated. Yes. From the Navy. From the company I work with, through the Navy. Is it the scary one? She asked. And then before he could answer, the one who makes your whole office quiet when she walks in. Ryan had forgotten he'd said that. He made a mental note to be more careful about what he said in front of Lily, who apparently stored every offhand comment he'd ever made in some internal filing system she accessed at will. She's not scary, he said. I've told you that. You've told me that twice, Lily said, which means you thought I needed convincing. Which means part of you thinks she's a little scary. He looked at his daughter for a long moment. Go to bed, Lily. That's not a denial, she said, but she picked up her whale book and went. He heard her laughing to herself as she walked down the hall. Saturday morning he was up at 6, made pancakes the real kind from scratch, the way his mother had made them. Not the box mix, because it was the weekend, and because he was, though he would not have admitted it to anyone, including himself. slightly nervous about the day, and cooking was the thing he did when he was nervous. He cooked systematically the way he approached most problems, starting with what he could control and working outward. Lily came downstairs at 7:45 in jeans, and her good sneakers, and a blue sweater that she had chosen herself, and that Ryan noticed she'd tucked in, which she never did. He didn't say anything about the tucked-in sweater. "Pancakes," she said, sitting down at the table. "Pancakes," he confirmed. She ate 3. He ate 2. She talked about the whale book she'd finished at Thursday night and was processing the ending, which she found emotionally complicated. A phrase she'd picked up from somewhere that Ryan found equal parts funny and slightly unnerving coming out of a 7-year-old. "The whale got free," she said, "but it had to leave the girl behind. And the girl was okay with it, but I don't think the whale was." "How do you know the whale wasn't okay?" Ryan asked. "Because it kept circling the bay," Lily said. "Even after it was free. It kept coming back to where the girl was. That's not an animal checking its territory. That's an animal that doesn't know how to leave someone it loves." Ryan set his fork down, looked at his daughter. "That's very perceptive," he said. "I know," she said, simply, the way she said most true things. They left at 9:30. Sophia was already there when they arrived. She was standing near the entrance with her hands in the pockets of a coat Ryan hadn't seen before. Dark gray, less formal than everything she wore to the office. The kind of coat a person bought when they were trying to look like someone who went places on weekends. Her hair was down. She was wearing flat boots. She looked without the executive armor both more and less like herself, more like the person she'd been on those stairs at 5 in the morning, less like the photograph on the company website. She saw them coming across the parking lot, and something happened in her face that she didn't manage in time. A kind of relief, or maybe readiness. The look of a person who has been waiting for something, and is now deciding with 2 minutes to go whether they were right to. Lily saw her at the same moment Sophia saw them. Lily looked at her, then looked at Ryan, then looked back at Sophia with the full, unblinking assessment of a child who has decided to form her own opinion and is in the process of doing so. "Hi," Lily said. She said it directly to Sophia. No preamble. "Hi," Sophia said, and then slightly off balance. "You must be Lily." "I am," Lily said. "You're the one who makes the office quiet." Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Sophia looked at him. He could not fully read her expression, which was rare. "Your dad said that?" Sophia asked. "He said it once. He didn't mean for me to remember it." Lily looked at her steadily. "But I remember everything." "Noted," Sophia said. "I'm not scared of you," Lily added, which Ryan understood from his daughter's communication style was meant as a reassurance, not a challenge. Something shifted in Sophia's expression. "Good," she said. "I'm a little scared of you, actually." Lily considered this. "Why, because your dad talks about you like you're very smart," Sophia said, "and smart people make me careful." Lily appeared to decide this was acceptable. "Okay," she said. "Do you know anything about whales?" "Some," Sophia said. "Do you know about baleen?" "Filtering system," Sophia said. "Plates instead of teeth. Blue whales can filter about 2,000 pounds of krill a day during feeding season." Lily's eyes went slightly wide. She turned to Ryan with an expression that said, "Where did you find this person?" "She works in defense," Ryan said. "She knows about submarines too." Lily turned back to Sophia. "The propulsion kind or the weapons kind?" "Both," Sophia said. "Though I find the propulsion more interesting." "Me too," Lily said. And she reached out and took Sophia's hand like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. The way children claim people they've decided to trust without ceremony or hesitation. Just a simple physical statement of, "You're okay, I've decided," and started pulling her toward the entrance. Sophia looked back at Ryan over her shoulder. He shrugged slightly. She turned back to Lily, and she walked with her. "Yeah, Ryan watched them for most of the morning. He told himself he was watching Lily. Which was true. He always watched Lily in the particular vigilant way of a single father who understood that attention was its own form of protection. But he was also watching Sophia, and he knew it, and he let himself know it without making it into anything. What he saw was this: Sophia Whitmore was not comfortable with children. She was not uncomfortable with Lily specifically, but she didn't have the fluency, the instinct that parents develop over years of small, constant translation between adult thought and child logic. She didn't automatically adjust her vocabulary. She didn't crouch down to eye level the way people who'd spent a lot of time around kids did. She spoke to Lily the way she spoke to adults, directly and without softening, and she was clearly bracing slightly for it to go wrong. And what Ryan also saw was this: Lily didn't need the adjustment. Lily met Sophia exactly where she was. She asked her questions that required actual answers. She listened to those answers with her full attention. When Sophia explained something technical about how water pressure affected submarine hull integrity, Lily asked 3 follow-up questions that built logically on each other, and Sophia answered all 3 with increasing animation. And by the end, she had her phone out and was pulling up a diagram she'd downloaded for a presentation she'd given 6 months ago. "This is the stress distribution along the hull at 300 meters, Sophia said, holding the phone toward Lily. "Do you see how the pressure concentrates at the weld seams?" "Can I zoom in?" Lily asked. Sophia handed her the phone without hesitation. Ryan stood behind them at the touch tank exhibit, watching his 7-year-old zoom in on a naval engineering stress diagram, with the focused expression of a person learning something they intended to use, and thought about all the ways life surprised you when you stopped trying to predict it. They had lunch at the Aquarium Cafe. Lily had a grilled cheese. Sophia had a salad she picked at while mostly talking. Ryan had a club sandwich and listened to the 2 of them argue in the most civil possible way about whether whales were smarter than humans. "They're not smarter," Lily said. "They're differently smart." "I agree," Sophia said. "But if they're differently smart, that doesn't mean less smart. It means the measurement is wrong." Sophia stopped with her fork halfway to her mouth. "That's a very sophisticated observation," she said. "I read a lot," Lily said. "I can tell." "My dad reads to me every night he's home," she said it matter-of-factly, not for effect. "When he's away for the Navy, we do it on the phone. It's not the same, but it still counts." Something happened in Sophia's face. Ryan watched it happen. The information landing, not the fact of the deployment itself, which she already knew was part of his life, but the image of it. A 7-year-old on the phone listening to her father read in a house where he wasn't there. The specific texture of that particular kind of absence. "It counts," Sophia said, and her voice had gone quieter. "Definitely counts." Lily looked at her for a moment. Children are better lie detectors than most adults, and Lily was better than most children. She seemed to be reading something in Sophia's face, cross-referencing it with whatever she already thought. "Do you have kids?" Lily asked. "No," Sophia said. "Do you want them?" "Lily," Ryan said. "It's not a rude question," Lily said. "It's just a question." Sophia set her fork down. She looked at Lily with an expression that was completely honest in a way that her professional face never was. "I don't know," she said. "I think I missed a window. I was very focused on other things for a long time." "Windows can open again," Lily said. "Like they can also open from the outside." Sophia stared at her. "Is that from your whale book?" "No," Lily said. "I just thought of it." She picked up her grilled cheese. "You could still have a kid. You're not that old." Ryan put his hand over his mouth. Sophia looked at him with an expression that was, if he was reading it correctly, something between "help me" and "I kind of love this child." "I'm 34, Sophia said. "Mrs. Patterson next door had her youngest at 38, Lily said. "Dad says she's the most reliable person he knows." "Your neighbor," Sophia said. "She knows everything," Lily said. "She knows when the mail comes late and why, and she makes cookies when people are sad, even when they haven't told her they're sad." She paused. "She says you can tell when someone needs a cookie before they know it themselves." That sounds like a useful skill, Sophia said. She's going to like you, Lily said, again matter-of-factly. The decision made the announcement delivered. Ryan looked at Sophia across the table over his daughter's head. Sophia was looking at Lily with an expression he'd never seen on her before. Not in the office, not in the conference room, not on the stairs in the early morning dark. An expression he didn't have a professional word for. Something open in it. Something that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. How do you know she'll like me? Sophia asked. Because I like you, Lily said. And Mrs. Patterson trusts my judgment. They walked through the rest of the aquarium slowly after lunch. Lily wanted to see the jellyfish exhibit twice, and the shark tank 3 times, and Sophia did not suggest they move along, which Ryan noticed. She stood at the shark tank the 3rd time, and watched with Lily, and asked her which one she thought was the oldest, and Lily picked the big nurse shark in the corner because it moved like it already knew everything in the tank, and wasn't interested in proving it. And Sophia said that was exactly right, and she didn't know how Lily had spotted that, and Lily said, because it swims like my dad does everything, like it's the most important thing, and also the least interesting thing at the same time. Ryan stood 2 steps behind them. That's a compliment, Lily added, sensing she might need to clarify. I know, Ryan said. It means you're confident, Lily said. I know what it means, Lil. Just making sure. Sophia turned to look at Ryan, and this time she let the smile all the way through the full, unreserved version, and it stayed on her face for longer than usual. They were outside in the parking lot before 2 o'clock. Lily was holding the small, plush orca she'd talked Ryan into buying at the gift shop, not by asking, but by simply standing next to it with the focused attention she gave to things she wanted, which was a technique he'd somehow never figured out how to resist. She held it now with both arms while Ryan got his keys. Thank you, Sophia said to Lily, for teaching me things today. Lily looked up at her. You knew more than me, she said, about the submarines and the pressure stuff. You knew more about the whales, Sophia said, and about how to look at a shark tank. Lily considered this fair. You should come to my school sometime, she said. We're doing an ocean unit in March. My teacher would probably really like someone who knows about submarine propulsion. Sophia looked at Ryan. Don't look at him, Lily said. I'm inviting you. Lily, Ryan said. I am, she said, looking at Sophia. You could be a guest speaker. We've had a firefighter and a dentist. A submarine person would be way better. Better than a dentist is a low bar, Ryan said. A very low bar. Sophia agreed. She looked at Lily. I'll think about it. Okay, Lily said. She reached out and hugged Sophia around the waist quickly and completely, the way she did most things, fully committed, no hesitation, and then done. She stepped back. Bye, Sophia. Sophia stood there for a moment with her hands slightly raised, the way a person stands when they've been unexpectedly embraced and their body hasn't quite caught up to what happened. Bye, Lily, she said. Lily climbed into the back seat. Ryan buckled her in. When he straightened up and closed the door, Sophia was standing a few feet away, and her hands were down now, and she was looking at the car, at the small shape of his daughter in the back seat, already opening her new orca's tag to read the species information on the back. She's extraordinary, Sophia said quietly. I know, Ryan said. You did that, she said. She didn't come out of nowhere. You made her that. Ryan looked at his daughter in the back seat. She did most of it herself. Give yourself the credit, Sophia said. And then, with a slight edge of the professional sharpness, she'd told him she hated people avoiding, don't deflect. He almost smiled. Fair. They stood in the parking lot for a moment, neither of them going toward their cars. Ryan, she said. Yeah, I haven't done that in... She stopped. I haven't spent a day like that in a very long time. I don't know exactly what a day like that is called. But I haven't had one. He looked at her. You can have more of them. I know, she said. Quiet. careful the way she'd been careful of him since the morning in the kitchen. That's what I'm thinking about. He nodded. Drive safe. You're the one leaving, she said, the same echo of the night he'd left her house at 5 in the morning. Drive safe when you leave, he said. She smiled. Good night, Ryan. It's 2 in the afternoon. I know, she said. And she walked to her car. Dahaman. 3 weeks after the aquarium, his orders came in. He'd known they would. He was still active duty, still a logistics officer, with obligations that didn't pause because his personal life had started becoming complicated in directions he hadn't planned for. The Navy had given him a long stretch stateside, longer than usual, partly because of Lily, partly because his particular skill set was more useful on land right now than aboard ship. But the stretch was ending. Temporary assignment, 8 weeks. A logistics coordination role at a naval installation in Bahrain, something to do with supply chain restructuring across multiple bases in the Middle East theater. Exactly the kind of thing he was good at. Exactly the kind of thing the Navy needed him for. Exactly the wrong time. He sat with the orders for an hour before he did anything with them. He thought about how to tell Lily first, because Lily was always first. He'd learned that from the divorce, from the ways Dana had been right about him, the ones he'd stopped arguing with. He'd learned that the thing that hurt Lily most was not the leaving. She was resilient about the leaving in the way of children who've been prepared for something instead of surprised by it. What hurt her was when he handled it badly, when he processed his own discomfort about going before he helped her process hers about being left. He picked Lily up from school, and he told her at the kitchen table while she was still in her coat, because that was when she was most herself right after school, when the whole day was still on her, and she hadn't had time to settle into the home version of herself yet. 8 weeks, she said. 8 weeks, he confirmed. I leave in 12 days. She was quiet for a moment. Bahrain, she said. Is that far? Time zone far, he said. We can still call. We can still read. On the phone. On the phone. She looked at the table. He let her look. He'd learned not to fill Lily's silences because she was using them. Is this because of the thing at work? She said. The photographs. No, he said. It has nothing to do with that. This is just the Navy. Just the Navy, she said in a tone that carried a full paragraph he wasn't going to argue with. I know, he said. She looked up at him. Will Mrs. Patterson stay here? Every night, he said. And I talked to your school. Your teacher, Ms. Rivera, knows the schedule. If anything comes up. I know the protocol, Lily said. She'd said that since she was 5. I know the protocol. She'd invented the word for the routine they had built together around his absences, which was her way of owning it instead of just enduring it. You know the protocol, he agreed. She was quiet again. Then, does Sophia know? He paused. You should tell her, Lily said. She'll want to know. Why do you think that? Lily looked at him with the expression she wore when she was deciding how honest to be. Because she likes you, she said. Not just. She seemed to choose the phrasing carefully. Not just as a normal person likes someone. Like how the whale kept circling the bay. Ryan looked at his daughter. I'm 7, she said. Not blind. He let out a breath that might have been a laugh. I know you're not blind. So does she get to know you're leaving? Yes, he said. She gets to know. Lily nodded. Put her hand flat on the table between them the way she did sometimes when she wanted contact, but was in a mood that didn't suit hugging. He put his hand over hers. I always come back, he said. I know, she said. That's not what worries me. Then what does? She looked at him with those eyes that saw more than they had any right to at 7 years old. That someday you'll decide coming back isn't enough. That you want to stay gone because it's easier. The air went out of him. He pressed her hand under his. That is not going to happen, he said. Quietly. Completely. That is the one thing you never have to worry about. You hear me? She looked at him for a long moment. The assessment, the cross-referencing. The thing she always did. Then she seemed to decide he'd passed. "Okay," she said. Simply. "Okay," he said. She pulled her hand back, unzipped her coat. "Can we have soup tonight?" "Yes." "The real kind, not the canned kind." "Yes, Lily." She nodded, satisfied, and went upstairs to change out of her school clothes. He texted Sophia that night. He kept it simple. "I have temporary orders. 8 weeks in Bahrain. I leave in 12 days. Thought you should know." She replied in 4 minutes, which was faster than she usually replied to anything that wasn't flagged urgent at work. "Can you talk?" He called her. She picked up on the first ring. "When did you get them?" "Today." "And Lily?" "I told her this afternoon." "How is she?" He considered the question. "Better than she should be," he said. "Better than she would be if I hadn't had 12 years of practice in how to tell her." There was a pause on the line. Then, "I've been thinking about what happens if what might change while you're—" She stopped. Started again, which was a thing she did now that she hadn't done 3 weeks ago. The willingness to try a sentence twice if the first attempt wasn't honest enough. "I've been aware that this was coming. That this is part of what you are. And I've been thinking about whether I—" Another stop. "Sophia," he said. "I've been thinking about whether I'm the kind of person who can do this," she said. "Not the 8 weeks. I can manage 8 weeks. I mean the whole thing. The uncertainty. The waiting. The—" She exhaled. "I've spent my entire career being the one people wait for, not the one who waits." He was quiet. "That's not a complaint," she said quickly. I'm trying to be honest with you, in the way that you've been honest with me." "I know," he said. "You're very calm about this," she said. "I'm not calm," he said. "I'm just not doing anything with the parts that aren't calm yet." She was quiet for a moment. "That must be exhausting. Sometimes." "Ryan?" Her voice changed, got quieter the way it did when she was accessing something she didn't usually let out through the professional channel. "I don't want you to leave without—" She stopped. Then carefully, "I don't want things to be unfinished between us. I don't know exactly what we are. I don't need to know exactly what we are. But I don't want you getting on a plane in 12 days with everything just—" She searched for the word. "Just ambient." He almost smiled. Ambient. Unspoken, hovering, just there without being said. "What do you want to say?" he asked. She was quiet for a long moment, long enough that he thought she might be reconsidering. Then she said, "That you're the first person in a very long time who made me feel like being cared for was not a problem to be solved." He sat with that. "And that I'm aware," she continued, "that this, whatever this is more complicated than either of us probably has time for. You have Lily. You have the Navy. I have the company. I have a board member who already thinks I'm making poor decisions." She paused. "And I still, despite all of that, I still want this to exist, whatever it is." Ryan stood up, walked to the window. The street below was quiet a December night, people inside lights in windows. "It exists," he said. She was quiet. "I'm telling you clearly," he said. "It exists. I've known that for a while. I just wasn't sure if you needed time to figure it out." "I needed time," she said. "I know." "Do you want more time?" she asked. "To figure out whether whether this is worth the complication of, Sophia." He said it gently, but with enough weight that she stopped. "I took a drunk CEO home in the middle of a company party and stayed in her guest room and left her a note and almost didn't leave at all because I was standing in her kitchen at 5 in the morning and I didn't want to go." He paused. "I've had time." Silence on the line. The particular kind of silence that has a lot happening inside it. "You almost didn't leave," she said. "No." "Why did you—" "Because Lily needed me home," he said. "And because I didn't want to scare you. And because some things need to be built at the right speed, or they don't hold." She was quiet for a moment. And now I have 12 days," he said. And I think we should use some of them. She breathed out. He heard it clearly through the phone, the exhale of someone who had been holding something for 3 weeks. Dinner, she said. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, he agreed. And the rest of the 12 days. Yes? And then you go, she said. And I wait. And you come back. I always come back, he said. The same thing he'd told Lily. He meant it exactly the same way. Another silence, then very quietly, okay. After he hung up, Ryan stood at the window for a while. He thought about the whale book about the whale that kept circling the bay after it was free. About Lily's explanation, that's not an animal checking its territory. That's an animal that doesn't know how to leave someone it loves. He thought about Sophia saying, I don't want things to be unfinished. He thought about the word she'd used, ambient, unspoken, hovering, just there without being said. He went to check on Lily. She was already in bed, the new orca plush tucked beside her, the whale book on the nightstand because she'd finished it, and apparently hadn't decided what came next. She was almost asleep. He stood in the doorway. Dad, she said without opening her eyes. Yeah. You called her, she said. Yeah. Good, she said, and she fell asleep. Dinner was at a restaurant near the waterfront. Not a company event, not a business context, just 2 people at a table on a Thursday night in December, with 8 days before one of them got on a plane to the Middle East. They didn't talk about the board meeting. They didn't talk about Derek Finch, who had been quietly reassigned to a satellite office in a development that Sophia had characterized in one text as handled. They didn't talk about work at all, which was, Ryan realized, the first extended conversation they'd had that didn't have work underneath it. She talked about her father. He'd been a civil engineer. He'd built bridges, literally built bridges, spent 30 years doing it, and believed with his whole considerable heart that the best thing a person could do was make something that held people up. She talked about watching him work on plans at the kitchen table. When she was small, the way she'd asked him once what held a bridge together, and he'd said tension. And she'd asked what tension meant, and he'd said 2 forces pulling in opposite directions that need each other to work. She'd thought about that her whole life. She still thought about it. Ryan told her about the sea, about what it actually felt like to be on a ship in open water, the specific quality of the silence out there. Not empty silence, but filled silence. A silence that had been there since before anything, and would be there after everything, and didn't particularly care about any of it. He told her how it had taught him patience. Not the practiced kind, but the real kind, the kind that comes from being small in a very large thing and knowing it. He told her about the first time he understood what it meant to be responsible for other people. Not his family, not Lily. That was different. That was love. He meant the first time he understood that the men on his ship went home or didn't go home. Partly based on decisions he made, and how that had felt, and how it had never stopped feeling like that, and how he had decided early on that the only way to carry that weight without it crushing you was to take it completely seriously, and then at a certain point, let go of what you couldn't control. She listened to all of it. She asked questions that showed she'd heard it. And somewhere between the main course and the coffee, she reached across the table and put her hand over his. She didn't say anything. He didn't say anything either. He turned his hand over, held hers. 2 forces pulling in different directions that need each other to work. 8 days, he thought. 8 weeks away. And then whatever came after. He didn't know what that looked like. He was honest enough with himself to know he didn't know. There were about 15 different ways this could go wrong. His career, her company, Lily's stability, the distance that 8 weeks could create in something that was still new enough, that distance might be too much for it. He knew all of that. But he was also a man who had learned to read pressure systems before they arrived, and what he felt coming, this thing building at the edges of his life, quiet and precise and warmer than he'd expected. Anything to feel again didn't feel like a storm. He held her hand across the table. 8 days. He was going to use every one of them. The 8 days went the way good things always go, faster than they should and better than expected. Ryan had learned a long time ago not to spend the days before a deployment bracing for the leaving. It was a trap he'd fallen into early in his career, this tendency to start grieving the departure while he was still present, which meant he gave the people he loved a version of himself that was already half gone. Dana had called it out once, sharp and precise, the way she was when something had been building in her for a while. You check out before you leave, Ryan. You're standing right here, and you're already somewhere else. He had argued with her about it at the time. He didn't argue with it anymore, so he stayed present. He took Lily to her favorite breakfast place on the Saturday before he left a diner 2 miles from the apartment that had been there since the 70s and had the best pancakes in Norfolk that weren't his own. She ordered chocolate chip. He ordered plain. They sat in the booth by the window, and she told him everything she wanted to do in the spring. A list that included learning to skateboard, building a terrarium, reading every book about ocean life in the school library, and teaching Mrs. Patterson how to use her tablet to watch nature documentaries. That's a full schedule, Ryan said. I'm a busy person, Lily said. You're 7. Busy people come in all sizes, she said. He spent 2 evenings with Sophia. Not elaborate dinner once, and one night where she came to the apartment after Lily was in bed, and they sat at the kitchen table with coffee and talked until nearly midnight about things that had nothing to do with defense contracts or Navy logistics. She told him about a semester she'd spent in London at 22, working for an engineering firm that did infrastructure assessments on old buildings. She'd loved it more than anything in her formal education. She'd come home because the opportunity in the States was bigger, the trajectory clearer, and she had never entirely forgiven herself for making the right decision. You can still go back, Ryan said. Not to live, but to visit. Lily would love London. Sophia looked at him across the kitchen table. You're already imagining the 3 of us in London. He didn't flinch. Aren't you? She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. Yes, she said. That's the part that surprised me. How easy it is to imagine it. Why does that surprise you? Because I've spent 15 years not imagining things like that, she said. Not because I didn't want to. Because wanting something you're not sure you can have is inefficient. She paused. I don't like inefficient. Lily would tell you that some of the best things are inefficient, Ryan said. She spent 4 hours building a birdhouse last month that no birds have visited. She's completely fine with it. What does she think the birds are waiting for? The right moment, Ryan said. She says you can't rush birds. Sophia looked at him steadily. She's talking about more than birds. She usually is, Ryan agreed. The night before he left, he sat on the edge of Lily's bed after she was asleep, and he did what he always did. He just watched her. Her dark hair spread on the pillow. The slow, confident rise and fall of her breathing, the breathing of a child who had decided the world was basically safe and rested accordingly. The orca plush tucked under one arm. He sat there for 11 minutes. He counted because he always counted, because the counting was a way of being completely in the moment, instead of sliding forward into what was coming. At minute 11, Lily said without opening her eyes, I'm asleep. I know, he said. You're staring. I'm a parent. It's what we do. She opened one eye. You okay? Yes. She looked at him with the one open eye for a moment. Then she said, I told Sophia to call me if she's sad while you're gone. I gave her my tablet number. Ryan blinked. When did you do that? At the aquarium, she said. When you went to the bathroom. I told her Mrs. Patterson checks the tablet with me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she could join those calls if she wanted. He sat there trying to process his 7-year-old having arranged a support network for a billion-dollar CEO without mentioning it to him. Lily, you're not the only one who can take care of people, she said. Both eyes were open now. Go to sleep, Dad. You have a flight. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. I love you, he said. Protocol's in the drawer. I know the protocol, she said. I know you know. Then stop saying it and go to sleep. He turned off the light. Dad, she said, Yeah. Come back fast. Fast as I can, he said. That's all I need, she said. Bahrain in January was not what most people pictured when they thought of the Middle East in winter. It was cool, genuinely cool, not the brutal, wet cold of Virginia, but a dry, precise cold that settled over the base in the mornings and burned off by noon. Ryan found the climate useful. It matched his mental state, which for the first week was exactly what it needed to be, clear, functional, focused. The work was good. It was the kind of logistics problem he genuinely enjoyed, layers of supply chain that had grown organically over years of operational necessity, and now needed a rational structure imposed on them without breaking what was already working. He spent long days in meetings and longer evenings at his desk, building frameworks that would outlast his 8-week assignment and actually make someone's job easier. He called Lily every day. Their calls were, as always, the organizing principle of his time away, not because she needed them to be, but because he did. She reported on the skateboard lessons that were going both better and worse than expected better, in that she hadn't broken anything worse, in that the board had slid out from under her twice in the first lesson, and she'd landed in a way that had made her instructor wince. She reported on the terrarium, which she was building in stages, and on Mrs. Patterson, who had joined the tablet calls with Sophia twice now, and apparently found this completely natural. "They talk about you," Lily said on one of their calls in the second week. "What do you mean they talk about me? Not to me, to each other. I can tell because when I walk in, they change what they're saying. But Mrs. Patterson has the look she gets when she thinks something is a good idea, but she's not going to say so yet." "What look is that?" "The cookie look," Lily said. "She gets it right before she decides to make cookies for someone." Ryan lay on his bunk in the quarters he'd been assigned, a small functional room that he'd made no effort to personalize, because 8 weeks was exactly the right length of time to not bother, and thought about Sophia and Mrs. Patterson on a tablet call while Lily was in the other room. The CEO of a defense company and a 73-year-old retired school librarian talking about him. "Should I be worried about this?" he said. "Definitely not," Lily said. "I think it's good. Mrs. Patterson can tell if someone's a good person in about 4 minutes. She said so." "What did she say about Sophia?" Lily was quiet for a beat too long, which meant she was deciding whether to share something. "Lily." "She said she reminds her of you," Lily said, "but with better shoes." Ryan lay there in the Bahrain dark and felt something warm move through him, which was not a thing he usually felt in a military housing unit in the Middle East in January. "Go to sleep," he said. "You always say that." "Because it's always the right call." "Dad." Her voice shifted, moved from the bright reporting tone into something quieter. The version of herself she mostly saved for bedtime, when the 7-year-old day was done and what was left was just Lily. "Yeah, I miss you," she said. "I miss you too," he said. "Every day." "I know." A pause. "But it's okay. I know the protocol." He closed his eyes. "I know you do." "Good night, Dad." "Good night, Lil." Damn. He called Sophia less frequently than he called Lily, and more carefully. Not because he wanted to call her less, but because the calls were harder to navigate, not emotionally hard, but structurally uncertain, in the way that new things are uncertain when you're still figuring out where the walls are and what's on the other side of them. The first call 5 days in, she picked up in what sounded like the middle of her workday, her voice already in partial CEO mode. And then he heard her tell someone to close the door, and when the door apparently closed, she said, "Sorry, Alcott's been pushing a governance review all week. I've been managing." "I saw the email," he said. There was a pause. "You saw the company email from Bahrain." "I'm in Bahrain," he said. "I still work for Whitmore through the Navy contract. I still get the distribution emails." "Right," she said. "I keep forgetting you're still part of the company from there." "Is that a problem?" "No," she said. "It's just strange. You're 11 time zones away and you still show up in my inbox." "How are you handling Alcott?" "The way I handle everything," she said. by being better prepared and more patient than he expects. A pause. And by being right. Are you about Alcott always? About the governance review? Yes, she said, and he could hear her settle slightly the way people settle when they're on ground they know. He's pushing for a restructure of the executive reporting chain that would give the board more direct operational influence. It's dressed up as a modernization initiative. It's actually about control. What are you going to do? Counter-propose something that gives them the visibility they're asking for without the operational access they're reaching for, she said. Give them the window without the door. Your father's bridge, Ryan said. She was quiet for a moment. What? Tension, he said. Two forces that need each other to work. Another silence longer. You remembered that. I remember most of what you tell me, he said. Ryan. Her voice had changed, gone quieter, the CEO layer sliding back to reveal the person underneath who had asked, How do you do it on a staircase at 5 in the morning? It's strange how quickly this became. I know, he said. I was going to say normal, she said. It became normal very quickly. Having you to call. Having you. She stopped. I'm not good at this part, she said. The saying it out loud part. You're getting better, he said. That's because you make it not terrifying, she said. And then quickly, like she'd said it before she could take it back. I miss you. That's what I was trying to say. I miss you, and it surprised me how much. He sat with that. Let it be as large as it was. I'll be home in 6 weeks, he said. 6 weeks is a long time. It is, he agreed. Call Lily on Tuesday. She already texted me, Sophia said. Apparently Thursday's tablet call includes a terrarium progress update, and I've been invited. She invited you? She did. A pause, and he could hear the smile in it. The real one, the one that changed her face. I bought a book about terrariums, so I could have opinions. Ryan sat in his small functional room in Bahrain and thought, there it is. The thing he'd known was coming but hadn't fully arrived at until right now. Sophia Whitmore, CEO billionaire, untouchable executive who made rooms go quiet, had bought a book about terrariums so she could talk to his daughter about one. Ryan, she said. Still here, he said. You went quiet. I was just... He stopped. Let himself say it the way she had quickly before he could think too hard about the architecture of it. I'm glad you're there, he said. Not just for Lily. For me. Knowing you're there. She was quiet on the other end of the line for a moment. I'm here, she said. Week 4 was the hard week. It wasn't one thing. It was the accumulation. The way long absences work. Not a crisis, but a slow pressure. The way water finds the cracks that were always there. He was tired from the pace of the work. He had a head cold for 5 days that he couldn't shake in the dry Bahrain air. And Lily's Saturday call lasted only 12 minutes because she had a birthday party to get to. And he sat in his room afterward with the silence and felt for the first time since he'd arrived the full weight of the distance. He thought about Dana. Not with longing that had been gone for a long time, replaced years ago by something that was honest and settled and looked like the truth that they had loved each other in the way of people who were genuinely wrong for each other, and that the damage of the divorce had been real, but the alternative would have been worse, and that what they'd built together that was actually worth anything was Lily. He thought about Dana because she had said once in one of their better post-divorce conversations that the thing that scared her most about Ryan was not that he didn't care, but that he cared so selectively. That he could love Lily completely and still somehow hold a part of himself back from everything else. Like he was rationing. He had argued with that at the time. He was thinking about it now. He called Sophia that night, without planning to, which was different from how he usually operated. She picked up on the third ring. Hey. She sounded like she'd been asleep, which meant he'd missed the time calculation by more than he'd thought. I woke you up, he said. I'm sorry. It's fine. He heard her adjust. Sit up probably. What time is it there? 8 p.m. What's wrong? She said. Direct. No preamble. The thing he'd come to understand was not coldness, but its opposite. She asked the direct question because she wasn't willing to waste his time on a softer approach when something was clearly wrong. Nothing specific, he said. Bad week, long, tired. Head cold still. How did you know about the head cold? Lily, she said. She mentioned it on Thursday's call. She wanted to know if I knew any good remedies. I told her hot water with honey and lemon. She said you would refuse to make it for yourself, so she texted Mrs. Patterson to make it for you instead. A pause. Did you get it? Ryan thought about the cup of hot water with honey and lemon that had appeared outside his door on Friday evening, with a note that just said, "From Lily, she called me." He had assumed Mrs. Patterson had called base housing. He had not considered the full operational chain behind it. I got it, he said. Good. He heard her shift. Tell me about the week. You were asleep. Ryan, tell me about the week. So he did. Not the logistics details. The professional stuff was easy to compress and file away. He told her about the specific weight of the fourth week of an 8-week rotation. How the first 2 weeks run on the momentum of preparation. How the last 2 run on the momentum of coming home. And how the middle weeks 4 and 5 especially were just weeks. No forward pull. No backward pull. Just the bare fact of being where you were far from what you wanted to be close to. She listened without interrupting, which was something he'd noticed she'd gotten better at over the past month. Sophia's default in professional settings was to listen for the information she needed, and then move. With him she'd learned he'd watched her learn it, to let the conversation arrive at its own pace. I feel like I'm rationing myself, he said, and then stopped because that wasn't what he'd planned to say. What does that mean? She said. He lay back on the bunk, looked at the ceiling. There's something Dana said to me once, that I care selectively, that I could love Lily completely and still hold something back from everything else. Sophia was quiet. I've been thinking about whether she was right, he said. Was she? I think she was right about the marriage, he said slowly. I think I loved Dana, and I still held myself back, and I think at some level I knew I was doing it, and I called it being careful. He paused. I'm trying to figure out if I'm doing that now. With me, Sophia said. Not a question. With us, he said. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful in the specific way it got when she was being precise about something important. I think, she said, that there's a difference between holding back and moving carefully. I've been trying to figure out which one you're doing. And I think you move carefully, she said, with everything. With Lily, with the Navy, with me. I don't think it's rationing. I think it's you don't put weight on things before you know they'll hold. Another pause. That's not the same as withholding. He stared at the ceiling. My father used to say, she continued, that the best bridges look like they're not trying, like the engineering is invisible, like the whole thing is just obvious, inevitable. Her voice had gone quieter. That's what the best ones feel like, not effortful, just right. And, he said. And this feels like that, she said. To me, I'm telling you that, clearly, so you don't have to hold back from saying it yourself. He closed his eyes. Sophia. Yes, I'm not holding back, he said. I needed to hear you say it first. She laughed. A quiet, real laugh, the kind that happened when something surprised her into it. You needed me to say it first. I'm working on it. You're terrible, she said. But her voice was warm. Get some sleep. You've got 4 weeks left. I know. And make yourself the lemon honey thing. Don't make Lily coordinate your vitamin C intake from 7,000 miles away. She's a logistics officer in training, Ryan said. I'm providing practice scenarios. Good night, Ryan. Good night. He hung up and lay there in the Bahrain dark, and the room felt slightly less like something to endure. 4 weeks. He could do 4 weeks. He came home on a Tuesday in late February. The flight landed at Norfolk at 2:30 in the afternoon, which meant Lily was at school, which they had planned deliberately. He didn't want the airport reunion, didn't want the big dramatic thing, wanted to get home and be home before she got there, so that when she walked in the door, it would just be him at the kitchen table like he'd always been there. He got his bag. He got a cab. He stood in his apartment for 10 minutes, just standing in it, touching the familiar geometry of it, the counter, the back of the kitchen chair, the window latch. He put the kettle on because he wanted coffee, and because standing in his own kitchen, doing the ordinary thing, felt like the most necessary thing he'd done in 8 weeks. He sat at the table, drank his coffee. At 3:22, he heard the front door. Lily came in carrying her backpack on both shoulders, her skateboard under one arm, and she stopped in the kitchen doorway and looked at him with both eyes wide. And then she dropped everything backpack skateboard. The folder she'd been holding, all of it hit the floor at once, and she crossed the kitchen in 4 steps and climbed into his lap like she was 6 again, instead of almost 8, and she put her face against his neck, and he wrapped both arms around her and held on. She didn't cry. She never cried when he came back. She made that sound instead, the low, involuntary, relieved sound that had no word for it, the sound of something that had been on hold, letting itself go. "You're home," she said into his neck. "I'm home," he said. She pulled back and looked at him at close range with the direct cataloging gaze, checking, making sure he was the same version that had left. "You look tired," she said. "I am tired. Mrs. Patterson made soup," she said, "the real kind." Of course she did. Lily climbed down and picked up her dropped things with the efficient movements of someone getting back to normal as fast as possible. "Sophia wants to come for dinner Saturday," she said as she hung up her backpack. "I already told her yes. Is that okay?" Ryan looked at his daughter. "I know I should have asked you," Lily said, which was her version of an apology that did not fully concede the point. "You should have asked me," he confirmed. "But is it okay?" "Yes," he said. "It's okay." Lily nodded, satisfied. She sat down across from him at the table and pulled out her homework and said without looking up, "She called me every Tuesday and Thursday while you were gone, the whole 8 weeks." "I know," Ryan said. "She never missed one." Lily opened her folder. "Even when she had a board thing, she called from the parking lot once. I could hear her engine running." Ryan looked at his daughter, and his daughter looked at her homework, and neither of them said anything for a moment. "She's the whale," Lily said quietly. Ryan looked up. "She keeps circling back," Lily said. "Even when she doesn't have to. That's what it means." She was still looking at her homework, but her voice was absolutely certain. "That's how you know." Ryan sat in his kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon in February with his coffee and his daughter's quiet certainty, and he thought about Sophia calling every Tuesday and Thursday for 8 weeks. From board meetings, from parking lots, from wherever she happened to be. He thought about the lemon honey tea organized from 7,000 miles away. He thought about a terrarium book bought so she could have opinions. He thought about the night he'd stood in a kitchen at 5 in the morning, not wanting to leave, and telling himself it was because Lily needed him home. He thought about Dana's words, "You hold yourself back, and you call it being careful." He looked at Lily, who was doing her homework across the table from him, as though he'd never been gone, as though things were entirely normal, as though Tuesday was just Tuesday. He thought not this time. "Lily," he said. "Saturday dinner," he said. "I'm going to talk to Sophia about something important." He paused. "I wanted you to know first." Lily looked up from her homework. She looked at him with the full, direct, both eyes, nothing held back gaze. "About time," she said. Then she went back to her homework. Ryan finished his coffee. Outside, the afternoon was moving toward evening. Somewhere in the city, a woman who had called his daughter every Tuesday and Thursday for 8 weeks was finishing what was probably a 14-hour day in a building that bore her name, and in 6 weeks she had a school ocean unit that was going to need a guest speaker who knew about submarine propulsion, and in 4 days she was coming to dinner. And Ryan Callahan, Commander United States Navy single-father man who showed up, was done being careful in the way that looked like something less. He had 4 days. He knew exactly what he was going to say. Saturday came the way important days sometimes do, quietly, without announcement, looking almost identical to every other day until you were inside it and realized it wasn't. Ryan cooked. Not because cooking was the thing he did when he was nervous, though he was, but because cooking was also the thing he did when something mattered, and he wanted to mark that it mattered without making a production of it. He made his mother's pot roast, the one that took 3 hours, and couldn't be rushed, and filled the apartment with something that smelled like every good Sunday of his childhood. Lily supervised from the kitchen table with the authority of someone who had been promised she could help with the rolls and was watching to make sure that moment didn't pass without her. "She's going to be nervous too," Lily said, not looking up from the book she was pretending to read. "What makes you think she's nervous?" Ryan said. "She texted me this morning to ask if you had any food allergies she should know about in case she brought something." Ryan turned from the stove. "She knows my food allergies. She's seen me eat." "I know," Lily said. "That's how I know she's nervous. She asked a question she already knew the answer to." He turned back to the stove. "I told her you were allergic to overthinking," Lily added. "Lily." "She laughed," Lily said. "It was the right call." He couldn't argue with that. He checked the roast, adjusted the heat, and thought about what he was going to say tonight, and in what order he was going to say it, and then stopped thinking about it because the order didn't matter. What mattered was that he said it. Clearly, without hedging, without the careful architecture he built around things he wasn't sure would hold. He was sure this would hold. That was new. He understood the thing that had changed while he was in Bahrain, lying on a bunk, looking at the ceiling. Not the feeling itself, which had been building since December, since a cab ride through downtown Norfolk, since a kitchen at 5 in the morning, since a woman standing on her own stairs asking how he did it. The feeling had been there. What changed in Bahrain was that he stopped treating certainty like a risk. Sophia arrived at 6 o'clock. She knocked, which she always did, even though Lily had told her twice she didn't have to. She was holding a bottle of wine and a small paper bag that turned out to contain a box of the chocolate chip cookies from the bakery near her office that Lily had mentioned exactly once in passing 4 weeks ago. Lily saw the cookies and looked up at Ryan with an expression that said, "See, he saw." "You didn't have to bring anything," he said. "I wanted to," she said. She came inside and let Lily take the bag with the cookies, and she handed Ryan the wine, and they did the small, ordinary choreography of people who had gotten used to being in the same space. Coates Keys. "Where do you want this? Something smells incredible," and it was easy. In the way that things are only easy when they've been practiced into ease, when all the strangeness has been worn smooth. Dinner was the 3 of them at the kitchen table. The same table where Ryan had signed permission slips and checked homework and drunk cold coffee at 11 p.m. and sat across from his daughter on a Wednesday night, while she told him the truth always comes out. The pot roast was good. The rolls Lily had helped make were slightly uneven, but completely fine. Sophia ate 2 of them and said so, which Lily accepted as the correct response. They talked about the terrarium, which was now fully operational, and contained 3 plants, a small piece of driftwood, and what Lily described as a very appropriate amount of moss. They talked about the ocean unit coming up in March, and whether Sophia's schedule could accommodate a school visit, which Sophia said yes to so quickly that Lily's face broke into the full, unguarded grin she mostly saved for things she'd been hoping for without saying so. They talked about a book Ryan had been reading in Bahrain about the logistics of historical naval campaigns, that Sophia had opinions about strong ones, and they went back and forth on it for 10 minutes, while Lily finished her 3rd roll and watched them the way she watched the Shark Tank, with the focused attention of someone learning how something works. After dinner, Lily cleared the table with the efficiency of someone who had decided to be useful and disappeared into her room with her cookies and her book, announcing that she was going to read for exactly 1 hour and then go to sleep. Which was, Ryan understood her version of giving them the apartment. He poured the last of the wine. They moved to the couch, which was not something they'd done before. The kitchen table had always been the default, the neutral professional adjacent territory of two people figuring out what they were. The couch was different. The couch was choosing to be closer without a table between them. Sophia held her glass and looked at the coffee table, where Lily's terrarium sat on one end, and the orca plush sat on the other left, thereby Lily Ryan suspected as deliberate set dressing. "She arranged this," Sophia said. "Probably," he said. "The terrarium and the whale, on the same table." "She has a sense of narrative," Ryan said. Sophia almost smiled. "She's going to be terrifying when she's 40. "She's already terrifying," Ryan said. "She's just also wonderful." Sophia turned to look at him. The apartment was quiet, except for the low sound of Lily's music from down the hall. Something soft. Something she'd decided set the right mood, which Ryan was choosing not to examine too closely. "Ryan," Sophia said. "I have something to say first," he said. She stopped, waited. He turned to face her fully. He'd thought about this, and he'd decided not to think about it too much, and what was left was just the truth in the simplest possible form. "I spent 8 weeks in Bahrain," he said, "thinking about what Dana told me, that I love selectively, that I hold myself back and call it being careful." He paused. "I think she was right about the marriage. I think I loved her, and I still kept a door closed, and I told myself I was protecting us both. And what I was actually doing was protecting myself from having to be completely in something." Sophia was very still. "I'm not doing that with you," he said. "I want to be clear about that. Not because I decided to be brave about it, but because with you I don't feel the closed door. It's not there." He held her gaze. "And I've been waiting to tell you that clearly, without hedging, without being careful about the architecture of it." She looked at him for a long moment. In the quiet apartment with his daughter's soft music down the hall and the terrarium and the orca on the coffee table. She looked at Ryan Callahan the way she had looked at him on the stairs at 5 in the morning. Not performing anything, not managing anything, just looking. "I called your daughter every Tuesday and Thursday for 8 weeks, she said. "I know. From a parking lot once. From an airport once. I moved a board dinner because it conflicted with a Thursday call, and I told my assistant it was a personal commitment." She paused. "I've never told my assistant something personal was non-negotiable before. In 15 years. "Sophia, I'm not finished," she said with a precision that was entirely her, the CEO clarity she brought to things that mattered. "I bought a book about terrariums. I know the names of every plant in that terrarium. I know that the moss took 2 weeks to establish and that Lily almost overwatered it in week 1, and that she named the driftwood Gerald because it reminded her of someone at your office." She stopped. "She told me what happened with Gerald at the board meeting. In some detail." Ryan looked at the ceiling briefly. "I read every article I could find about the logistics of naval supply chains in the Middle East theater," Sophia continued. "Not because it was relevant to my work, but because I wanted to understand what your days looked like when you were describing them to me on the phone." Her voice was steady and completely serious. "I have not been this invested in anything outside of my company in 15 years. And I need you to know that, clearly, without hedging." He looked at her. "So," she said, "say what you were going to say." He put his wine glass on the table. He turned to face her completely. "I want this to be real," he said. "Not ambient. Not something that exists in the space between other things. I want Saturdays. I want dinners at this table. I want you calling Lily on Tuesdays and Thursdays because you want to, not because I'm gone, and it's a way of staying connected to me. I want you at the school ocean unit in March, and I want you at the dinners that aren't occasions, and I want—" He stopped, said it. "I want the ordinary stuff. The unmemorable Tuesdays. I want you to know where we keep the extra rolls of paper towels, and what time Lily goes to bed, and which coffee mug is mine." He held her eyes. "I want all of it." Sophia set her wine glass down beside his. The thing he'd watched happen to her face over the past 3 months, The gradual, hard-won opening of something that had been closed for a very long time was happening now fully without the usual last-second management. The CEO was gone. The person who asked, "How do you do it on those stairs?" was gone too. What was left was just Sophia, looking at him, making a decision that she had probably been making for weeks and was only now saying out loud. "I want the paper towels," she said. He let out a breath. "I want to know where everything is," she said. "I want the Tuesdays." A pause. "I want to come home to something, Ryan. That's what I've been trying to say since December, and not quite managing. I've spent 15 years building a company, and I am very proud of it, and I go home to an empty house, and I am done. I am completely done with that being the whole story." He reached over and took her hand. She let him. She folded her fingers through his the way you hold something you've already decided you're keeping. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. They sat like that for a while, in the quiet kitchen-smelling apartment with the wine they'd stopped drinking, and the terrarium on the table, and the small sounds of Lily pretending to be asleep down the hall. Then Lily's door opened. She walked into the living room in her pajamas, the new ones with the small blue stars because she'd finally agreed. The yellow star ones were too small, and she stopped in the doorway and looked at them on the couch, at their hands, at their faces, with the full cataloging, nothing escaping me gaze that had been making adults mildly nervous since she was 2 years old. She looked at Ryan, then at Sophia, then back at Ryan. "Okay," she said. Ryan looked at his daughter. "You were listening." "I was reading," she said. "I could just also hear." She crossed the room and sat down on the arm of the couch beside Sophia, with the casual certainty of a child who has already decided where she belongs. "I have a question," she said, directed at Sophia. "Okay," Sophia said. "If you're going to be here more," Lily said with the precision of a person who already knew the answer was yes and was simply proceeding on that basis. "Can you teach me about the submarine propulsion, the real version? Not the simplified version Dad gives me." Sophia looked at Ryan. He shrugged. "She wants the real version." "The real version involves a lot of math," Sophia said to Lily. "I'm good at math," Lily said. "She is," Ryan confirmed. Sophia looked at Lily for a moment with the expression she got around her. The open one, the unmanaged one, the one that had been there since the aquarium when Lily took her hand and pulled her through the entrance without ceremony and changed something in her that stayed changed. "Deal," Sophia said. Lily nodded, satisfied. She stood up. "Good night," she said. And then, with the timing of someone who had clearly been saving this, "Don't stay up too late. Dad has a 5 a.m. schedule." She went back to her room. Ryan sat on the couch and listened to her door close and thought about all the things his 7-year-old had arranged and coordinated and quietly, patiently built over the past 3 months. The Tuesday calls, the terrarium conversation, the cookies, the ocean unit, the orca on the coffee table, the strategic exit from the living room, and he understood with complete clarity that he and Sophia had both believed they were figuring this out on their own timeline, and that Lily had in fact been gently and methodically building the bridge the whole time. "She planned this," Sophia said. "She plans most things," Ryan said, "including us." He thought about it. About the aquarium, about Lily taking Sophia's hand at the entrance. About she's the whale dad. She keeps circling back. About the tablet number exchanged in the bathroom while he wasn't watching. About time delivered to her homework without looking up. "She saw it before we did," he said. "She just waited for us to catch up." Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I want to be good for her. Not just good to her. Good for her, the way Mrs. Patterson is, the way you are." Her voice had the quality of a commitment being made out loud, not a wish. "I don't know all the ways to do that yet, but I want to learn them." "You're already learning them," he said. She named her driftwood after Gerald. Sophia looked at the terrarium. "I know," she said. "She told me why. She said Gerald is important to the ecosystem but ultimately decorative." Ryan laughed, genuinely. The kind of laugh that comes from a deep and involuntary place. He hadn't laughed like that in a long time. He hadn't realized until it happened how long it had been. Sophia looked at him laughing, and something happened in her face that was different from anything he'd seen there before. Not the smile, not the real one he'd been cataloging since December, but something quieter and bigger than a smile. Something that looked like relief. The specific earned relief of a person who has been alone for a very long time and has stopped finally being alone and is only now understanding what that feels like from the inside. She leaned against him. He put his arm around her. They sat in the apartment that smelled like pot roast and his mother's recipe, with the terrarium on the coffee table and the orca plush beside it, and Lily's soft music still drifting from down the hall, and the wine they'd stopped drinking, and the Saturday evening settling into Saturday night, and neither of them said anything for a while, because there was nothing left to say that needed saying out loud. 3 months ago, Ryan Callahan had stood in a bathroom mirror in his dress blues thinking about a permission slip and a dental appointment, and whether he needed to go to a company party he didn't want to attend. He had gone anyway, the way he went to most things, because it was required, because showing up was what he did, because the mission was the mission. Even when the mission was a holiday party with a string quartet and passed appetizers. He had not gone looking for anything. He had simply gone. And he had seen a woman standing alone near a bar who needed someone to walk toward her instead of away. And he had done the ordinary human thing of walking toward her. And he had not known that the ordinary human thing was going to reach inside the life he had built. The careful, functional, deeply loved life he had constructed on the other side of loss, and expand it in a direction he hadn't known it needed to go. Nobody is meant to survive alone. He had known that. He had believed it abstractly, the way you believe things you've learned from other people's mistakes. He knew it now, the way you know things you've learned from your own life in the body, in the bones, in the specific weight of an arm around a shoulder, in a quiet apartment on a Saturday night. Down the hall, his daughter was in her star-printed pajamas with her orca plush and her terrarium plans and her absolute uncomplicated confidence that the truth always comes out and the whale always circles back, and windows can be opened from the outside if you know what you're doing. And here on this couch, in this apartment, in this ordinary Saturday, that had turned out to be the most important Saturday in a very long time, was Sophia Whitmore, who had called every Tuesday and Thursday, who knew about Moss Establishment, and Gerald the Driftwood, who had leaned against him without asking permission, because she had decided she was done asking permission to need someone, and she was here, and she was staying, and this was not ambient anymore. This was real. This was the bridge his daughter had been building from the moment she took Sophia's hand at the aquarium entrance, one plank at a time, one Tuesday call at a time, one terrarium update and submarine question and well-timed exit at a time, built by a 7-year-old who understood with the clear-eyed certainty of someone who had never once stopped believing in the moral arc of every story that the best things are not found. They are built carefully by people who love each other enough to keep showing up. Ryan held on, and for the first time in longer than he could measure, the silence around him was not empty. It was full.